Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming, and good evening all those who are joining us on the internet. As Marina said, tonight is the last talk of this series, where we have been exploring the yoga of theosophy. The yoga, as we said in the first class, in the first talk, is a spiritual training. That word comes from Sanskrit, but today is used in a quite universal way. Many traditions use the word yoga to allude to some kind of training, usually related with spirituality in some way. So when talking about the yoga of theosophy, we are talking about the approach, the theosophical approach, to the spiritual development. As we have seen, the aim of the theosophical yoga is to discover truth, to be free from suffering, from sorrow, as it is the aim in most of the traditions. But that is not the only aim. The idea is that the person that is freed from the illusion, free from error, can help humanity also to be freed. And the real aim why a person in the theosophical view should look for the discovery of truth is to be able to help others also. Because after all, we and others are expressions of the same self. So as we grow in the spiritual path, we naturally come to the realization that there is not a real difference between us and between the rest. And that we cannot be happy unless there is happiness in general, so to say. So there is this sense of love that comes, that develops, and where our view or our concern is not so much about ourselves, but about the totality. And then we saw that there are some disciplines that can help us in this journey, this spiritual journey. One is what we called service, in a very wide sense, not just giving things to people, but service as a way of being, to break through the self-centeredness that we are usually forced by our culture to live in. So when we begin to pay attention to the needs of other people, we come to a more balanced view of ourselves, of life, of everything. It's not that we have to deny ourselves in an artificial way, but we are as important as any other person. My suffering is as important as any other person's suffering. And of course, we have a responsibility with ourselves and the people who are close to us, and we cannot go everywhere trying to free people from suffering, but we can be more aware of the universal nature of suffering and how we can contribute to generate happiness. And then if we go deeper, we can see that the generation of happiness is not going to come about through giving material things or through trying to change the situations, but by helping people to realize truth, whatever truth is. So all this is part of this development or this treading the spiritual path from a theosophical point of view. Then we saw that study is also one discipline that is important, because that brings us clarity, insight, that acts as a map that shows us where we should go and how we should proceed in this journey. And then also study is a way to know ourselves, to know the tools that we are using in this journey, and also study involves to be alert to what happens in our life and to learn from our experiences. So as you see, service, study, they appeal, if we want to put it this way, to our hearts and to our minds. And meditation is a way to connect both, to blend both, heart and mind, because it actually goes beyond what we know of ourselves, what we usually are identified with. From a theosophical point of view, meditation has a transcendental aim. You know, today we know meditation is very well known by many people today, the practice of meditation. This wasn't the case 100 years ago. But if you see how meditation is advertised, many times it is advertised as a way to generate certain physical welfare, to release stress, to rejuvenate ourselves, or, you know, related to some physical benefit that you can get from meditation. And that is okay, but it's a rather narrow aim for meditation. There are other ways that are easier. You know, for example, sitting outside, watching a beautiful sunset, relaxed, will have the same physical and physiological effects that could have a practice of meditation at that level. And meditation is much harder than simply enjoy relaxing and watching something beautiful in nature, for example. Also, meditation is advertised sometimes as a way to produce a psychological or emotional benefit, to feel peace, to feel harmony, to feel love, which again is okay, but if meditation acts only at that level, it's not very different from other means to generate these feelings in ourselves. You know, it's not really different. People think that when they feel peaceful through meditation, that will produce something much better than when they feel peaceful when they are in the bathtub, you know, just resting. And at the level of feelings, it's not really different. So trying to go to meditation with the aim of producing a psychological or emotional benefit is taking meditation in a rather narrow way. And there are other ways that are easier to attain those aims. Now, meditation can really produce a transformation in ourselves if we approach the practice in the right way. And I don't pretend to know what the right way is, because different traditions see this in different way, but I can say what, from a theosophical point of view, is a useful way to approach meditation. So in Theosophy, it is said that the aim of meditation, there are two main aims. The first one is to help us realize our true nature, our true self, our real individuality. The idea is that this personality, this body, emotions, and mind are just temporary tools of our real self. Once this life ends, we let go of the physical body, the emotions, and our minds. And if you believe in reincarnation, the next life, the soul will take, or the real self, let's say, will take a new body, a new emotional nature, or we could call it emotional body, and also a new mental body. So this personality, composed by body, emotions, and mind, is not permanent, it's not our real self, although it is part of ourselves. You know, our nails are constantly changing. It's not that they are not ourselves, but we are not the nails. They are an addition on ourselves. So in the same way, these bodies are an addition which are constantly changing. So the first aim of meditation is to discover who we really are beyond all these changing aspects of our nature. And the second aim is said to be that once we realize our real identity, there is still a further journey that the person can take through meditation that will lead him or her to realize that his true nature is one with everything. So the first aim is to realize our true nature, and the second aim is to realize the unity that we are all part of. So as you see, these aims have very little to do with our mind, emotions, and body. It's not that they are not regarded or that they are, let's say, disregarded in the theosophical approach. There is a work that we have to do on our bodies, emotions, and minds, but the work is not for the sake of these aspects of ourselves. The work that we do on our bodies, emotions, and minds is to put some order in these vehicles of consciousness, as we call them, to put some order and some harmony so that we can perceive truth. So the aim is not to entertain or to give, to respond to all the whims that our bodies may have. The aim is to use them in the right way. And unfortunately, many times, since our culture is so materialistic, many times spirituality is also approached in a very materialistic way. Spirituality is approached as a way to feed our personality, to feed our psychological needs and emotional and physical. And if it is done in a balanced way, that's okay. We all have needs, and we need to address these needs. But this culture is constantly generating new needs to be able to sell products to, fulfill the new desires. So we enter in a circle of trying to fulfill needs which are never going to be fulfilled if we are working at the same level. We can transcend a need, we can put order in a need if it is not a natural need. We all need food, we need shelter, we need to relate with each other with love. You see what the effect on each one of us is when we are in an environment where there is violence and conflict. That has a very negative effect. I think that love is not only love between a couple, but love in general is part of the needs, the psychological needs that we really have. But if we concentrate on a need from the point of view of the personality, it's usually very difficult to address that need without generating a vicious circle. So the idea is that real happiness, real harmony, real peace comes with the discovery of who we really are. Because our real nature is complete, is perfect, is eternal, cannot be harmed. So as we discover this aspect of ourselves, most of the psychological needs which come out of fear, of anxiety, most of these psychological needs disappear naturally. So all this comes to the question that our culture is too focused on our personality, our physical body, emotions, and mind. And spirituality, many times, the modern spirituality, is also doing the same. It's also focusing on the personality. The point of view of Teosofia, as I was saying, is, and of most spiritual traditions, serious spiritual traditions, is to discover the real, and then all the rest is going to be taken care of. Like Jesus said, look first for the kingdom of heaven, and then everything will come, by itself. So, with meditation, we have to start knowing that the aim of this practice is to produce a result on the spiritual level. If we go to meditation looking for pleasant sensations, that in itself may become a hindrance for the practice and may put a limit to what the practice can produce on us. Because, for example, something that is very important in our spiritual maturation is to acquire self-knowledge, to be able to, if we don't understand what is going on in our psyches, then we are the slaves of our unconscious reactions. So the first thing we have to do is to become aware of all these psychological movements that are going on inside. So self-knowledge is this process of becoming aware of everything in ourselves. But for the time being, we usually perceive only what happens at the level of our body, emotions, and mind. Eventually, we can discover some higher aspects of ourselves. And becoming aware of this psychological movement is not always pleasant. In fact, many times, it produces some conflict. But it is necessary. There is this, in all the fairy tales, you have the typical, the hero that has to get some kind of treasure, or the princess, but before the hero can get the reward of his journey, he has to face either a monster or some difficulty. And that is a myth for our spiritual search. Before we can discover who we really are, we have to face our shadow, as Jung used to call it. We have to face that thing, those unconscious processes that may look scary to us. But we have to face them and go through them, and then we will be able to discover our real self. So in meditation, as part of the growth in meditation, many times we may come to discover things that are not necessarily pleasant, or we have to face things that are not necessarily pleasant. So if we go to meditation thinking that meditation should produce a sense of harmony, happiness, and peace, well, probably it won't produce it. And if we think that that is the aim, as soon as we see that it is not producing harmony, then we will quit the practice, or we will question it, or we will try to look for another practice that is not actually showing us who we are. So meditation, or the spiritual practice, becomes one more escape from ourselves. So it's not that meditation is a conflict also. The meditation is as life is dynamic, and as we go through life through periods of happiness and then through periods of sadness or conflict or everything is easy, in meditation we also see all this. In meditation we experience all this. So if we go with a predetermined result in mind, if we are seeking something that we predetermine, that will stop the process. This is something important. And also another thing that is important is that if we are really working at the root of our nature, the effects are not going to be very visible right away. There are techniques that you can apply and that can bring instant results. But those results, they don't last. Whatever you can do right away is usually something very superficial. For example, you can go into meditation and repeat a mantra or count your breathing or whatever, any of these techniques, and you may feel very well while you are doing this technique, if you concentrate your mind and forget about everything. So you can say, oh, this technique really works. But it didn't change anything. It's like when you are happy watching a movie. Then you finish the meditation, you go on with your life, and you are just exactly the same as you were before. I'm not saying that the work with mantras or with counting the breathing is useless. What I'm saying is that if we take techniques in a very simple-minded way, because they many times are advertised in a very simplistic way, they may produce instant results, and those results will disappear as fast as they were produced. So if we are really practicing a meditation, trying to address or to work at the roots of our nature, it will take time for the results to show at the level of the personality. Because most of the work is done on our higher consciousness, in a sense. And of course there will be changes, but those changes will be gradual, natural, and usually we will be the last ones in realizing the changes. Usually people who are outside may see the changes before we do. Because the change is simply the lack of something that, for example, now we are not so worried about things. But when you change naturally, you just stop being worried and you don't realize that's your natural state, as the state of worry was before. So you don't realize that it is different. This is what you are. And somebody from outside may say, hey, you are not so, worried as you were in the past. It's difficult to perceive it because it's the lack of something that spiritual practice produces, the lack of something that was not healthy. So going to meditation, trying to get results is tricky in itself. We shouldn't. The very practice of meditation implies to do it without ambition, without trying to produce a result. Of course, we meditate because we trust that will produce a result, that will help us realize our real nature or truth or whatever. That's fine as a general aim. But we should let go of any anxiety about seeing results and trust that the results will naturally come. The more anxious we are to see results, the more obstacles we put in our way. Because the mind that is looking for results is the mind that has to be silent, the mind that is what in Theosofia we call the lower mind, or the personal mind, that is always trying to get a benefit for the self, the psychological self, not the real self. So if we are meditating with ambition, our consciousness is stuck in that process of the lower mind. But as we let go of ambition, then our consciousness can begin to work at the higher levels, the higher mind, which is impersonal, is unselfish, and has to do more with truth and reality. So these aspects, not to go to meditation with any predetermined result in mind, and not even to look for results, are like the foundation for the practice. Then the practice of meditation itself implies basically, there are several techniques, but basically what they try to produce is to silence, as I said, our superficial mind, because a superficial mind can perceive only the superficiality of life. So the Greeks used to say, to be able to see beauty, there has to be beauty in ourselves, because it's that beauty in ourselves that responds to the beauty outside. If there is no beauty in ourselves, there may be something very beautiful and we won't see it as beautiful. So in the same way, to see the depth, to perceive the depth of life and of ourselves, our mind has to be deep. And that deep mind begins to express when the superficial mind is silent. The Christian mystics used to say, either God speaks and I am silent, or I speak and God will be silent. Because it's the same. You can see it from many points of view, but we talk about the higher mind and the lower mind as a conventional way. Consciousness is one, but it is either working at the personal level, or it stops working there and will be working at the spiritual level. So the aim of meditation is to try to lead consciousness to a deeper aspect, a deeper level, and silence our superficial mind so that our perception can be raised and we can discover either about ourselves or life or a particular object of meditation that we may be choosing, that we can discover the truth that is related to that. So usually the problem with meditation is that our minds cannot be silent. Our superficial minds are constantly stimulated in our culture. The whole way our culture is developing is based on to increase the number of stimuli and to decrease the time that we are paying attention to that. So everything is fast, everything is right away, but we have millions of things that are being offered to us, and that is constantly stimulating our superficial mind. Even with reading, we are taught to read fast. And yeah, that may be wonderful if you want to read things that you don't have to pay attention to or to put much thought into. But if you want to read something if you really want to read and reflect and realize something, you have to read slow, you have to think, you have to pause. So you see the two different approaches in our culture and how the approach that is currently the most stimulated is the superficial kind of approach. So therefore, naturally, when we sit to meditate, that superficial mind is still looking for all these stimulus, is still looking for excitement. So when we say, well, now keep quiet, our minds has a habit. It's like anything else. So it has a habit of being restless. So the first step that is usually advised in the practice of meditation is to be able to come to a state of silence through concentration, trying to concentrate our minds. So there are different techniques to concentrate our minds, but this concentration, to really work, we need to extend the practice of concentration to our whole life. Because we may be meditating half an hour a day or 1 or 2 hours, but if the rest of the hours our mind is scattered, then it's very little what we can do. It's very little what we can change. So the recommendation in theosophical literature usually is try to, when you do something, try to do it putting your whole mind into that. Try to be concentrated. Don't go here and there. And if you have to, because you have responsibilities or kids or whatever, stop doing something, put your whole attention to whatever is calling your attention there, then switch, forget about that, put your attention again in whatever you are doing. Try to not to keep in mind your mind constantly changing here and there, going back and forth. If we try to, for example, when we do the dishes, we can do the dishes thinking about any other thing, or we can do the dishes paying attention to the whole thing, paying attention to our movement, to the sensation of the water in our hands, to the weight of the dishes, We can use anything that we do during the day as a training for meditation. And in fact, it becomes a form of meditation itself. So if you go to work, when you are driving, instead of thinking about something else, pay attention to everything you are doing. Not only to what happens outside, of course, but also to the weight of your body on the chair and the seat, and then to all sensations. Pay attention to that. If there is anything that you do regularly during your day, you can pick that as a training and say, okay, I do this every day. Let us try to do it with mindfulness. So during meditation, the idea is that concentration is to focus our mind in a particular object. Object doesn't necessarily mean something concrete. An object of meditation may be an image, may be a phrase, maybe a concept, maybe ourselves, our minds, or our bodies, anything that we choose to meditate on. So during the phase of concentration, the idea is that the mind has to be able to remain with the object of meditation. So this depends, for example, if your object of meditation are your thoughts, then whatever thoughts come, you pay attention to these thoughts. And there are no distractions as long as you are aware of your thoughts. Now, if your object of meditation is a phrase, then if you are thinking about the phrase and then you start thinking about something else, those thoughts will become a distraction. So the extent of or what is a distraction and what is not depends on the object of meditation. Usually at the beginning it's good to begin with an object of meditation that is defined. But you have to try these things. Maybe you are able to start meditating, for example, just paying attention to your thoughts, emotions, your physical sensations. But usually that requires more practice and more maturity, or not maturity, but certain work on ourselves that if we didn't do it before, we need to do it. So let us suppose that you take a phrase with a concept that you want to explore and you want to realize the truth about that. A concept about something that really is important for you in your life. So the stage of concentration is when you try to keep your mind around this concept. If your mind goes off, then it will go off, and then you don't get frustrated, you don't get angry. Just naturally bring your mind to the contemplation of that particular thought or phrase or concept. Then your mind will go off, and again, gently, you bring it back without trying to fight your mind. Fighting the mind is part of our ambition. We have to enjoy the process and not be so concerned with the result. If all we are concerned with is the result, having a calm mind, we are not going to attain a calm mind, or at least not the kind of calm mind that is needed in meditation. Because in meditation we need a mind that is calm, but not repressed. We can repress the movement of our minds in many ways, but that is not useful for meditation. So the process of concentration is basically this. It's a training of our minds to be able to focus on a particular chosen object. We all are able to concentrate on things, but we do it involuntarily for the most part. If something attracts our attention, then we are concentrating on that. We have to be able to do this voluntarily on whatever object we choose. So this aspect of meditation may be kind of mechanic because it's actually retraining our mind. It's not that this aspect of meditation will lead us very deep, but it is necessary if we are going to go deeper. So once our minds are able to stay on a particular object of meditation, the next step, which is called meditation in itself, a stage where our minds can work with that particular object without being distracted, begins. So, for example, there are different techniques of meditation. You can meditate by using your thinking and trying to realize some spiritual truth. In Buddhism, for example, they say that one should meditate on 4 main concepts, karma, this law of cause and effect, and how important it is to have a human life and not to waste a human life, and a series of concepts. In Hinduism, especially Vedanta, there are some phrases that the person should meditate on, like I am the ultimate reality, that is called that, I am that, trying to realize our identity with the ultimate reality, or similar phrases. Or in Theosophy, we meditate on different spiritual concepts that are important to understand to lead our lives in a different way. So that is an approach to meditation. Another approach uses visualization, where the idea is that this is many times useful for people who are more devotional than intellectual. So you visualize your ideal of perfection. It could be a deity, or if you are Christian, it could be Jesus, or it could be in the theosophical environment, it could be the master of the wisdom, or it could be your higher self. Whatever brings to you a sense of devotion, and whatever means to you the perfection, the perfect ideal embodied in a form. So you visualize that image that you choose and try to unite with that image. The idea is that by doing that, you can actually, your consciousness can actually connect whatever that image is representing in the universe. If what you are meditating on is, for example, the love that is expressed by visualizing Jesus, for example, if you are Christian, your consciousness may blend with the universal love, and little by little be transformed by that. So in this approach to meditation, we don't think, we don't reason about a concept, but we try to visualize and unite to our object of devotion. And there is another approach to meditation where we neither think nor visualize, but we just watch, we observe. And this is the kind of awareness meditation that are in many traditions also. So the point in this kind of meditation is just to watch things as they are. You may be watching your breathing, you may be watching your physical body, your physical sensations, or your emotions, your thoughts. But the idea is that you don't try to manipulate what you watch. You don't try to change what you watch. Even if you are watching your thoughts, you don't say, I like this, I don't like that, I shouldn't be thinking about this. You just watch them as you watch the clouds going through the sky. You don't try to stop them, to modify their direction. You just watch them. In the same way, you watch whatever is there. So in this approach to meditation, you develop awareness, or you use your awareness more than thinking or visualizing. And there are several techniques, different techniques that I don't have time to talk about them now, but as Marina said, we are preparing some classes for next year where we are going to try all these different techniques. probably eight to 10 techniques. And but there is a website that if you can see there, TheosofyA.org. Zyan is DZYAN, Theosofy.org, where you may find material about all different techniques. We are still working on this website and adding more material, but you will see many techniques that are recommended in the theosophical literature. Now, we have seen two steps, concentration and meditation. But the idea is that once the process of meditation goes deep enough, once we do everything we could through the use of our mind, we let go of everything. We let go of every intention or every process of thinking or of visualizing, and we stay in a state of, as Krishnamurti used to say, passive awareness, which is a step that is called in Theosophy contemplation. In this stage, the attempt is to go beyond our minds, is to go beyond our brain consciousness. But you can attempt this stage after you have done everything you could, so to say, at the level of your mind. It's like if you want to shoot an arrow, you have to tense first the bow, and then you can let go of the arrow. In the same way, you're working through your mind or through your intention is like tensing, the cord, and then once you got to that point, you let go, and there may be an insight that comes beyond our mind, from a place that is beyond our mind. There may be a perception that goes beyond our brain consciousness. But that is something that is beyond our will, is beyond ourselves. We can do concentration and meditation using our will, our thought, our intentions, but contemplation is the dropping of everything and just staying in that state in a very alert way. So these are the three steps that are usually described in the theosophical literature for the process of meditation. When meditation is practiced along with study, along with service, along with the general earnestness, it may produce changes in ourselves. If meditation is used in an isolated way, just like a technique that we apply for some minutes in the morning every day, it's not going to produce much result. It may help like anything else, but real results come from a holistic approach. At least that's what the theosophical literature proposes, and it's also what I seem to see in my practice. So I don't want to... I mention this especially because today meditation is advertised as just meditate half an hour a day or 1 or 2 and everything is solved. And you don't have to do anything else. And it usually doesn't work, and you can ask to practitioners if you are with people who practice meditation and you have a confidence, you can see that if they are only doing that, it's not producing much change as if you are doing anything else. So from the theosophical point of view, meditation is part of the spiritual life, not an aim in itself. This is more or less what I wanted to share with you. Of course, this, as all the other subjects, is very deep and there are many aspects that we could talk about, but at least I wanted to present the general view with the foundations, and you can go to this website to get more specific information. And then if you are interested, you can come to the classes where we are going to explore the different techniques and practice them so that you can be able to experience a little the techniques and choose whatever approach is more suitable for yourself. So So now we could, as usual, open to questions or to comments with the audience here or on the internet.
We do have a couple questions from cyberspace.
Mm-hmm.
First, how does the Pali word bhavana relate to meditation?
Yes, every tradition has different words for these steps. They are a little different in the traditions, but in general they mean more or less the same. So in Sanskrit you have dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, and in Pali bhavana is usually used for. Also, you have in these two processes of insight, for example, samatha, which is the concentration, and then vipassana, which is the part of the insight meditation, they call the part where you start actually doing something with your mind to understand a concept, for example. So samatha and vipassana are used also as synonyms of many times of concentration and meditation. Bhavana is used in different ways also. This is used also in Hinduism. But it has to do usually with more the process of using your thinking and trying to get to an insight. Then there is a word for the trance or the state of absorption that can come after bhavana, which is jhana in Pali, and that has more to do with samadhi in Hinduism or in Sanskrit. But these words are used in different ways. Even within Buddhism, for example, Tibetan Buddhists, they mean with vipassana and samatha, they mean different things that the Pali tradition, Buddhist tradition, mean by those words. So it is important when we are studying a particular tradition to get to know what they mean by that particular word. Even if we know that word from many other traditions, don't immediately assume that the words mean the same because they are the same. It's like in English, many people use the word contemplation in English for a process of not thinking, but just being in a state of awareness. And some other people use the word contemplation for the process that we are using here as meditation, the process of thinking. So words are used in different ways, and it is important to have this in mind.
We do have one other question from cyberspace, but I wondered if anyone had a question from the audience here at this time.
What are the differences or benefits between meditation alone and with a group?
Meditation with a group is usually used, well, there are two ways of practicing this. There are some group meditations where somebody is leading a kind of meditation, and these group meditations are usually used to produce a kind of to produce harmony, to produce love or peace, because the idea is that everything we feel or we think is not simply subjective, but it produces a vibration on subtler dimensions or planes of the universe, which actually affect people around. So many times the group meditations are a way to produce thoughts that tend to be, harmony or peace or healing, things like that. Also, there is a kind of group meditation which is actually a kind of individual meditation, but in group. This may be useful for people who are beginners, and maybe not so useful for people who have more experience, because you can feel it. I felt this several times, and I heard that other people also felt this, that if you are meditating with a group that is very, is not very homogeneous, with people that have all different tendencies and understanding of meditation, sometimes it's difficult to get to a deep place in yourself, because probably the vibrations that are being produced by the group itself are disturbing in a sense. Now, if you are with a group of people who are all following more or less the same practice and that are serious, the beginner may be uplifted by the practice or helped by the practice of the rest there. So this kind of group meditation is a very good form of service if you have more or less experience in meditation, because probably you are helping with the process of meditation of other people. Of course, this said in a very humble way. If you go there thinking that you are going to uplift people, then you are not, But generally speaking, seeing this from an objective point of view, that may happen. And individual meditation is good in the sense that when there is a guided meditation, you have to go with the times that the guide is, using. Sometimes there are good meditations, very good meditations, but before you go from one step to the next, you should do it once you had gained certain insight in the previous step. And in a guided meditation, there is no way that the person can respect the times, of every person. So individual meditation may be a good practice in that sense, in the sense that you have your own time and you have your own approach to meditation. So every technique has its good and not so good aspects. I think it's good to practice in different environments and different ways.
How would that sincerity and accuracy you describe as essential to meditation carry over to the practice of prayer?
Again, prayer is taken in very different ways. For some people, prayer is to ask for things. And these things that they ask for could be very material things, to have a car, to have a job, to have a wife. Or it could be more spiritual things or more psychological things, to have happiness, harmony, peace. Or very spiritual things, like to have a realization of love or of unity. But in any case, it's a kind of exercise where we are asking for ourselves. If we are asking something with the pure intention of, for example, if I'm asking to have discernment, to be able to see what the right thing is, because that is going to benefit the whole, then I would say that you can ask that in the sense that it's not selfish. Now, if I am asking for myself, then it's okay, but after all, you are asking for yourself at the level of your personality. It may be something self-centered yet. But prayer may have many other meanings also. Prayer may be a way to send thoughts of goodwill and peace and love to other people when you are praying for the world or for other people. So in this case, it's similar to these group meditations that we were talking about, or even individual meditation where the person is trying to send other good thoughts to people around or the world. Or prayer may also be a personal prayer to commune with the divine, to unite to the divine. So you see, prayer is something that may mean many things. Now, sincerity is always important, because even if we are praying to get a car from God, if we are sincere, eventually we will discover many things there. We may discover that, after all, that may not be the cause of happiness, that I may be asking for a car or whatever, and I may be insensitive to people who are in a much poorer condition than myself. If I'm sincere, if we are sincere, we can discover what is wrong in our approach. And this doesn't apply only to prayer, it applies to the whole spiritual life. We naturally will approach things in a more or less wrong way. I use the words wrong and right, like in a scientific way, not with the sense of you are wrong, you are right, no, not in the judgmental way. But the fact that we are not wise means that many things we think or we do are not the right things, are not correct. So naturally, there are, in all of us, in our approach, there are things that need to be corrected or purified. So if we are sincere and eager, we will discover these flaws in our practice, the practice of prayer or meditation or whatever spiritual practice. So that's very important. We have to start. I think that the Christian idea of the original sin, if it is taken in the right way, or what I think is the right way, is very useful, because we have to start knowing that we are wrong, but not with the sense, oh, I'm a sinner and I cannot do, with the sense that I know that I'm wrong, I want to discover truth, and therefore I will not be surprised when I see that I am wrong, when I see that I'm doing something that suddenly I discover is not the right thing to do. So if you start from there, you will be able to recognize where you may be failing without any sense of self-denigration or anything. You know that you are wrong, and you are happy that you discover where you are wrong. It's a spot that you can work on and get rid of that illusion or mistake in that sense. So you are really eager to discover where you are wrong. It's not a matter whether you are wrong or not. You know that in many things you are wrong, so it's a question of discover where you are wrong. So if you are sincere, you will be willing to discover where you have to work on. If you are not sincere and you are pursuing the spiritual practice, to convince yourself that you are different or for different reasons, then that keeps you in a circle that is very difficult to break through. So I think sincerity is very important.
Is the theosophical form of meditation, can you think of it as a kind of service?
Yes. The idea is that everything every time that we can defeat the evil in ourselves, just to talk about this in a metaphorical way, everything that we defeat the evil inside ourselves, or the illusion, or whatever is wrong, since we are one with everything, we are also, to a certain extent, defeating this in the world. So the very process of discovering truth affects the whole humanity to a certain extent. So in itself, it's a service. But also, when you see the different techniques that are recommended in the theosophical literature, most of them include a step of trying to send everything. For example, if you are meditating on a virtue, on love, or on anything like that, there is always a step before you finish your meditation that is recommended to send all that sense of love to the world, or to pick a person that you know is in need of love or in need of help, and try to visualize the person and try to send good thoughts to this person. Or there are other techniques where you try to, first you enter in a deep state of meditation, then you try to bring, the world or people to that state. There are different approaches that I cannot mention here because of the time. But usually in Theosophical meditation, we have this step, which is similar in a sense to the Buddhist practice where they offer the merits of the meditation for the world. In Theosophy we have that, but in a more complex way, in a more detailed way. You do something in particular more than just the intention of sharing the merits of the meditation. So it is seen also as a practice of service in that way.